A long day of testing is over and we have a few interesting takeaways that could bring us an interesting race on Sunday. Despite the common knowledge that overtaking here is extremely difficult. But more importantly, we have a shock driver card in play that comes from none other than Japan. Whether it is realistic, we will find out in this video.
A strong day for Ferrari. Leclerc topped FP1, Hamilton topped FP2 in a Ferrari 1-2 ahead of teammate Leclerc. The chassis is genuinely competitive on this circuit, and the ADUO upgrade is doing what Wasser promised it would do, even though the PU will play a lesser role here in Budapest. Max Verstappen complaining as usual. Setup issues, downshift problems, the Red Bull feeling held back. Nothing new here. Same story as most Fridays, and P4, nothing to see here. Mercedes off the pace on paper. Antonelli only P13 after he had to take a break in FP1. Russell describing his car as badly out of balance. But this is standard Mercedes Friday behavior. They will return to strength on Saturday, as they have all season. If Monaco is any indication, Mercedes should be strong here too. Remember Kimi won that one a few weekends ago. The top stories for us today are elsewhere. Aston Martin's long-awaited B-Spec upgrade package finally arrived. And a very interesting statement came from Ryo Hirakawa about wanting an F1 race seat as soon as possible.
Let us start with Aston Martin because this is definitely the top story of Friday.
Because this was the weekend they finally showed the paddock what all the patience talk was about. The B-Spec package arrived. The car looks visibly different, almost kick-sauber green in places, according to photographers who caught the Flovis paint covering the bodywork floor and rear surfaces. That is standard practice for a major upgrade, but rarely applied this heavily, which tells you everything about how much aerodynamic data Aston Martin were trying to collect across FP1 and FP2. The result on the timesheet. Fernando Alonso finished FP2 in P19, sandwiched directly between the two Cadillacs. Bottas ahead, Perez behind. And critically, the gap to the fastest lap of the session came down to just under 3 seconds.
According to our estimates, that is at least 1 full second closer to competitive pace than Aston Martin had been running before the upgrade.
Sources close to the team indicated that a further gain toward the 2-second mark is a realistic weekend target, as calibration and setup optimization work continues through FP3 and qualifying. If that materializes, Aston Martin could finish the weekend ahead of Cadillac, a benchmark that would have been unthinkable 2 weeks ago. But the day also contained the reminder that reliability is the real weekend challenge. Lance Stroll suffered a suspected left rear suspension failure in FP1. The car spun, red flags came out, and Aston Martin's mechanics could not complete repairs in time for FP2. Stroll's entire Friday program was lost. Alonso ran the team's data collection alone for the afternoon. Adrian Newey addressed the suspension issue in the Friday press conference and confirmed the affected area of the car was not modified in the B-Spec package. Quote, "The area involved was actually not changed. We are short on spares because the cladding and so forth is different, so there are some minor changes in that area. In that sense, it's very unexpected." End quote. That last part matters. Aston Martin is genuinely tight on spares right now. If any further failures occur across the weekend, the team's program is at real risk. Newey himself delivered the most anticipated press conference of the day. And in classic understatement, he practiced the art of saying nothing, which is a skill Max Verstappen has spent 5 years perfecting. Newey said things without saying them. On the results, quote, "Provisional results are promising," end quote. On performance goals, quote, "I've never been a fan of setting goals. I'm much more a fan of working logically through problems," end quote. On whether the B-Spec makes Aston Martin the fastest car, quote, "Is it going to make us the quickest car? Unfortunately not. But does it represent a good step forward from where we were? Yes, I believe it does." End quote. And on the immediate weekend target, quote, "Hopefully we can get at least a point and respectability now." End quote. 1 point, respectability. That is now the calibrated Aston Martin public target for this weekend. 3 senior figures at the team have now delivered near identical expectation management. Craig said both cars finishing. Orihara said just room, not a real number. On the 50 horsepower rumor, Newey said 1 point and respectability. Same script, 3 separate media sessions. But the most important sentence from Newey's press conference was about Honda. and it came in response to our own question about how the partnership has evolved since Australia. Newey's answer is worth quoting in full because it tells you where Aston Martin genuinely believes the recovery is coming from. Quote, "What's really progressed is actually the word you just used, relationship. Out of what can only be called a disastrous start, the positive of that, because you're always looking for positives, is that it's brought Honda and ourselves, AMR, into a very close working relationship. We continue to develop that in all areas. Normally, if relationships improve, then performance also improves." End quote. Reading between the lines, Newey did not claim the Honda power unit is where it needs to be. He claimed the working relationship between Aston Martin and Honda is. And he framed that relationship improvement as the leading indicator of what happens next, which brings us to Zandvoort. Newey confirmed that Hungary is only phase 1 of the recovery package. Further steps are coming at Zandvoort and again at Monza and Baku. Zandvoort is when the new Honda power unit arrives. The two-part test, aero in Hungary, engine in Zandvoort, is now formally the team's own framing. Our reading. The Hungary upgrade is a genuine step. Not enough to make Aston Martin competitive at Aston Martin's own definition, but enough to move them ahead of Cadillac. And enough to signal that the promised recovery is materializing in real hardware, not just words. If Alonso closes that 2-second gap on Saturday, Aston Martin leave Hungary with a story to tell. If he does not, the recovery becomes a Zandvoort question rather than a Hungary answer. Now to the second story of the day, which broke in the paddock after FP1 and did not receive nearly enough attention. Hirakawa-san completed his second FP1 outing of the 2026 season on Friday, running the Haas machine in place of Oli Bearman, his time on the sheet, 17th, 9/10 behind Esteban Ocon in the sister car. But the timesheet is not the story. The media pen afterwards was. Hirakawa is now 9 FP1 sessions deep across his career as reserve for multiple teams. 6 for Haas, 1 for Alpine, 1 for McLaren, plus his 2026 running including TPC tests. When asked directly about his timeline to a race seat, his answer left no ambiguity. Quote, "As soon as possible," end quote. He confirmed that decisions on his next step will be made toward the end of the year, but he wants to build his 2026 Spec car mileage as high as possible before then. 2 more FP1 sessions are planned this season. First, Hirakawa bringing himself into play with a claim on the seat in case Ocon leaves, which is currently the paddock consensus, and with full Toyota backing, and Haas needing a financially strong partner. This is not completely out of the question, despite the strong claims that nationality is not a decisive factor for choosing a driver. According to Aya Komatsu. And Komatsu is right, the team is choosing their driver not by nationality but by pure merit. And here Hirakawa comes highly recommended from several reliable sources close to the team. And the mileage he has collected makes him fit to challenge the seat in 2027 with Oli Bearman as the lead driver. But more importantly, Hirakawa has a mission of national interest, to train and develop a program for future Japanese F1 drivers. And if you look closely into F3, there is something building up that could inherit the pioneer path Hirakawa will ultimately have laid. A shame it will not be Yuki Tsunoda, who is still fighting for a return to F1, though his options are shrinking with each passing week. Our editorial position. Hirakawa is the driver who brought himself into play, but comes highly recommended and with financial firepower to back it up. Watch this space. A Hirakawa announcement would be one of the more editorially interesting news items of the second half of the season, and definite proof that Toyota has higher ambitions than just being a technical partner to Haas. Before we sign off, something special for our subscribers who may have already seen the campaign. We are giving away an Oliver Bearman Haas team cap, signed, to one of you. Important this time, I want to make sure that everyone understands the terms. First, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And second, leave a comment below with the word bear. We will be back on Monday with our key takeaways from this weekend and our F1 WAGs report, with one family growing and marking their territory inside the paddock. The old-fashioned way. Thank you for watching.